The impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump over. The Senate now has a pretty clear schedule. Now they could start working on the stimulus checks. So now Joe Biden is pushing a $1.9 trillion package, which includes another one-time $1,400 stimulus check, and many other things. Some of them good. I would say good, but not good enough. There are other things that we need to do. Now, centrist Democrats and Republicans seem to agree on a lot of things, including, the fact that they think that the stimulus checks are too generous. And we should really pare them down, right? Now, I have to note the stimulus checks are already means tested, the ones that we had already received. Okay, couples making over $150,000 or $75,000 for individuals, based on their 2019 taxes, they are not eligible to receive a payment, right? So, nonetheless, right, they think, oh, no, this is not means tested enough. We need to means test it more. Interesting. And who better to talk about it than, of course, a group of very white, wealthy conservatives on the supposed liberal network, MSNBC. In fact, here is Steve Rattner on Morning Joe to talk about how we need to means test this more. Take a look.
It's been very interesting to watch because there was a point in time where you thought, well, maybe some sensible people would get involved and they would cut the price down a bit. They'd make it more targeted. But now the political impetus, the political pressure, all seems to be in one direction. There's a lot you can do. There's nothing really in this bill to fix the fundamental issues of the American economy. There's nothing in here for infrastructure. There's nothing in here for climate and so forth. It is really simply pouring money at the problem. And only 1% of this entire $1.9 trillion bill is actually going for vaccines. The rest is going for things like checks to individual Americans. And even under the revised House proposal, something like 85 or 88% of Americans will get some kind of a stimulus check. Not always the full amount, but a significant stimulus check for no particular purpose when most Americans are still actually doing pretty well. It's really the ones who've lost their jobs and suffered from this are the ones we should be focusing on.
It's a pandemic. I mean, he says, oh, man, we're giving people money for the full amount of money for no particular reason. No, there's a reason. It's our money. And we need it. Right now, people are suffering. The economy has stalled. In reality, we shouldn't be sending people back. We shouldn't have been sending people back to work right now. We have nearly 500,000 people that have died as a result of coronavirus in this country. And so, come on. No, the best way to solve the problem right now is to take care of the virus so that we can open up, right? So that means, of course, getting everybody vaccinated in a timely manner. And obviously, that's going to take a lot of time. And B, while we're doing this, give people money to survive, which we're not doing. A $1,400 check is not going to solve the problem. A $2,000 check is not going to solve the problem. $2,000 monthly, retroactive to the beginning of the pandemic, that would help. Yes, that would actually help. Because look, right now you have an estimated 14 million renters that are behind their rent and at risk of eviction in the middle of January, according to the Census Bureau. You have an estimated 16 million renters that have little or no confidence that they could pay their rent in February. You have the amount that of past due rent that is over $70 billion. When rent moratoriums end, that debt does not disappear. That gets all due. And if you don't have the money to pay it, which people that obviously are benefiting from a moratorium on rent and need the stimulus checks are not going to be able to do. So right now, it looks like the problem is being put off to the end of the pandemic. And what we're going to see is a massive spike in homelessness when this is over. What we should have, $2,000 monthly checks, student loan cancellation, mortgage and rent freezes, a complete lockdown for at least a month, maybe several months, in order to control new infections and to get everybody vaccinated. If we don't, well, then not good things are going to happen. And so we didn't do any of that. We're kind of screwed now because the chickens are about to come home to roost at the end of this. But yet this guy, Steve Rattner, says, well, you know, the checks, I mean, we need to make them more exclusionary. Okay, here's an idea. You give everybody money now, and then you tax it back from high earners. Simple as that. Universal checks. Everybody gets one. And then at the end of the year, you say, okay, who didn't need one? And then you tax it back. Simple as that. Simple. Now, here's why that's more effective. It gets out faster. You don't have to figure out who's eligible, who's not eligible, and try to target it. No, you can figure out all that stuff in order to figure out who to tax later on when they file their taxes. Yes, universal checks monthly, it's just more effective. And then, of course, the big advantage to that is nobody falls through the cracks. Okay, if, for example, if you made, over $150,000 back in 2019, assuming that we're going with those numbers, and that's what the Biden plan is calling for, they haven't actually restricted eligibility, which is good. So you made $160,000 in 2019. You're doing pretty good, right? Well, then you lost your job as a result of COVID. Over 100,000 businesses have closed permanently. So there's a good chance that you might have lost your good job. And now, in order to make ends meet, you're making $30,000 as a delivery driver and whatever, additional part-time job you've had to pick up in the gig economy, right? And again, usually that has to do with food service preparation, delivery. Those are the things that are really active now as a result of the pandemic. And so if you're in that position, you probably need that check, right? But because of the eligibility requirements, there's a chance that you won't get that check because of your prior income. So not good, right? Now, Steve Rattner, in another part of the segment, did claim that there was, people don't actually need the checks because, look, we had a 5% overall increase in personal income in 2020. So obviously, that's why the checks need to be targeted a little bit more. They're doing fine. Let's give it to corporations instead. What? Hold on here. Now, it turns out that the figures that he cite from the Bureau of Economic Analysis even disagrees with Rattner's assertion and says, actually, no, that's a bad metric. Quote, the full economic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic cannot be quantified in the personal income and outlays estimate because the impacts are generally embedded in the source data and cannot be separately identified. Meaning, don't use that metric to argue against stimmy checks. You can't really use that. And contributing to that, by the way, is a stat that, there was over $1 trillion increase in billionaire net worth that happened during the pandemic. That was a growth of about 34% for rich people. Now, if you lump that in, do you not think that that's going to skew the numbers just a bit? I think it will. It's going to skew the numbers. They're going to be off a bit. So now, look, the real plight of the American people is that they're not doing well. You've got millions of people that have fallen into poverty as a result of the pandemic, while the richest Americans, as I said, grew their the wealth by massive gains, collectively gaining $1.1 trillion since mid-March of 2020. To put that in perspective, $1.1 trillion would equal a stimulus check of more than $3,400 for every one of the roughly 331 million people in the United States. Everybody. What billionaires gained just this year is enough to send everyone a stimulus check in the entire country. $3,400. In fact, a family of four would receive over $13,000. And the richest Americans, by the way, made that, as I said, in a year. And yet, this is while we, the people, got two checks, $1,800 to survive in that time period. There's a big difference here, right? Not to mention the trillions of dollars in quantitative easing that got given to the banks as well as a result of the Federal Reserve pumping money into those banks in order to increase liquidity during this crisis. Yeah. So, all that should boil your blood. It should, because there is no reason the government couldn't afford to give you money. But you have greedy ghouls like Steve Rattner telling you on a supposedly lefty network, MSNBC, which is laughable, that no, you don't need it, you don't deserve it. Well, let me show you why he is wrong. It turns out that collective work income of rank and file private sector employees declined this year by 1%, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics. Over 73 million people have lost their jobs between March 21st and December 26th of 2020. 16 million were collecting unemployment on January 2nd, 2021. Nearly 100,000 businesses are permanently closed as a result of the coronavirus, according to Yelp and CNBC. 12 million workers have likely lost their employer-sponsored health insurance during the pandemic. As of August 26, 2020, likely millions more have also lost that insurance, which is why we need a Medicare for All system. Some 29 million adults reported between December 9th and 21st that their household had not had enough food in the past week. From November 25th to December 7th, between 8 and 12 million children lived in a household where kids did not eat enough because the household could not afford to fully feed them. And more than 14 million adults, 1 in 5 renters, reported in December being behind, as I mentioned before. So, but please, Steve Rattner, keep telling people how they don't deserve a check. Seriously. Understand too that these checks they're not a handout. That's our money. Okay, this is not a freebie. This is what the minimum of the government should be doing during a crisis. This is a crisis. This is when the government should be doing more. This is the whole reason that we created government right now, is to help people during crisis and actually, do things that are distributive policies and also work for the common good. Right? And so they should be doing things. And these are survival checks to ensure that millions of people don't actually go hungry. Okay? And look, if some rich people get it, I don't really care. You can tax them back later. It's a disingenuous argument, right? And we saw this a lot during, the primaries, even during the discussions about, for example, canceling student loan debt and making college free. They said, well, why would you allow a rich person to go for college for free? I mean, public university. For one, they don't go to public universities, but if they did, okay, go free. All right, I really don't care, because you know what? We should be taxing those same rich people, or I should say their families, that are sending these kids to college for free. That's okay. We're going to tax your parents. We're going to tax your family more to make up for it. And so you're actually going to pay into the system more so that more people can also go to college for free. That's how it's supposed to work. That's why universal systems do work. But see, this is the problem, okay? Republicans, and yes, a lot of Democrats have been convinced that, that we can't do that. That government, people don't want government. Government shouldn't help that much. Now, Republicans, of course, think, well, our entire purpose is to break government apart, to first prove that government doesn't work by sabotaging it, so that we can privatize it, we can break it apart, and we can sell it off, and so that our donors can make money. That's our whole purpose. That's why the Republican Party exists, other than, of course, being a money funneling scheme to the rich. Again, part of that is through the privatization, and there are other ways that they, bilk their followers and siphon money off the backs of the hardworking American people, right? And so they want to, again, privatize government. And so if you do government programs like UBI, universal checks, right, during a pandemic, and you actually allow government to function and run and do useful things, well, that completely disproves their entire narrative, their entire theory is just shut down. And people are like, oh my God, it turns out the government actually helps. And it actually can do good things, can actually work for us. Well, it turns out I like that. I like when the government does positive things for the family, or for my family, and you know, for us, right? And so Republicans are like, nope, we can't do that. We can't do anything like that because we have to prove that government doesn't work, so we can break it apart, so we can sell it. And then, you know, look, small government to Republicans just means less taxes on them and their donors. That's really what it is. And also less regulation for their corporate donors. And so the only that's the only thing, that's the only reason they talk about small government. In reality, again, I've shown you many examples of Republicans calling for larger government to more, you know, enforce conservative social norms. And that's what it is. But again, going back to Steve Rattner, remember a lot of these people on the Morning Joe panel, Morning Joe's a conservative. A lot of these people are conservative. It's crazy to me to think there's, you know, conservative people on what was supposed to be a liberal network. But that network, of course, is a giant corporation, so they're going to skew conservative on economic issues. And so screw them, screw MSNBC, screw Steve Rattner, screw Morning Joe, and the rest of these ghouls that, you know, are standing in the way of your survival checks. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.